ticked off from his small box as far as the Guns pulp mill is concerned, but that's not a social licence. That's not a tick off from the people of the Tamar Valley. It's not a tick off from the Greens, and it won't be. And it is a long way before this pulp mill starts its job of polluting as prescribed in that location on the Tamar River. I'll ask Christine to speak a bit about the mill and this process, and then I'll come back and sum up.
Thanks, Bob. Well, the federal government should not have legitimised the assessment process of the proposed Guns pulp mill. It was very clear that this assessment process was corrupted right at the time when it was taken out of the RPDC process, and to now give it the green light suggests that the federal government gives some credence to the notion that this was properly assessed. It was not. The people of the Tamar Valley do not want this mill. The people of Tasmania do not want this mill. There has not been a proper assessment. The proposed site was never rigorously assessed in the first place. We all know that the Tamar Valley suffers from atmospheric inversion in the winter, and there's no way that those gases will not be trapped during the winter time, and also the fugitive emissions will cause a great big stink in the valley. Also, in terms of the marine environment, we know that Bass Strait off the Tamar is very shallow, and that the mill is unlikely to be able to achieve the dispersion and dilution levels that it says it can. Fundamentally though, Guns said it would build a totally chlorine-free mill. That was its proposal, and it has failed by its very own mouth in terms of what it is now proposing. It's up to all of us to now get behind the community in the Tamar Valley and point out to both the federal and the state governments, this mill has no social licence, it will not be built, we can't see it there now, and we won't see it there in the future.
Thanks, Christine. The late great Labor Premier of Tasmania, Eric Rees, saw the Tamar as being the Ruhr Valley of the Southern Hemisphere, industrialised from end to end. And this effort to put in this pulp mill is the last of that vision of industrialising a valley where the money, the jobs, the investment, the future is in clean, green future, is in the multiple smaller businesses who are manufacturing, farming, growing wine, who are hospitality, who are wanting to present to the rest of the world a magnificent place to visit and enjoy, and the pulp mill cuts right across that. Tony Burke has made a mistake. He doesn't live in the Tamar Valley or in Tasmania, but the campaign will continue. As Christine said, Guns began with a chlorine-free, plantation-based pulp mill, and it hasn't got back to first base, but that remains to be seen. I remind you all too that this tick-off by the federal minister has not looked at the impacts on the flora and fauna in Tasmania of a mill go-ahead. It has not looked at the health impacts on 100,000 people in the Tamar Valley. It has not looked at the impact on the beaches which front the sea into which the emissions will go. This is confined to a federal jurisdiction waters and very, very limited. There has not been a proper assessment of this mill. The proper process was corrupted by the Lennon government, and until it gets back and gets a proper assessment, it's not going to gain approval. If the minister or the state government and the oppositions want a dinkum mill, then they'll have a mill that's got a social licence, that is sited outside the Tamar Valley, that is based on plantations, and that means the current plantation estate, and which is closed loop and indeed world's best practice. And another question for Guns here is the current plantation estate as far as you're going to take it, or are you going to be continuing to swallow up more prime farmland, food producing land in Tasmania in competition with the current farming base to establish the fodder stock for this pulp mill? A lot of questions like that to be answered by Guns yet. I'll be meeting Guns on the 17th of March, and I'll be putting those questions directly, but they know exactly where we stand on it.